Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1561 of our daily content grind. So I have an update from something from a couple months ago. Do you remember when I asked everyone to go hit like on a tweet from Iron Mouse because I was trying to get my VTuber persona onto one of her fashion show streams? I appreciate everyone doing that for me. Unfortunately, she never got around to it, but she is going to do it again. So can you do a quick Christmas present to me? Take 5 seconds to click the link in the description. Go leave a like on this post that I have linked to, featuring my VTuber model, because frankly, I didn't get nearly as good of a jump on this one as I did the last one. So the only chance I have of making it on stream is going to be if you guys help me out a little bit here. I hate asking people to go back to Twitter, but it literally takes 5 to 10 seconds of your time. And it's just a small little Christmas present you can get me. If you could, please, I would appreciate it very, very much. It could be a huge deal for a project that is very important to me. Okay, cheap shilling out of the way. Let's actually talk about the robots. And this is a topic that I've been thinking about for a while because of another thing that I was reading the other night. We'll get into that here in a bit. But we have brand new photos of an upcoming reuse of Studio Series Hot Rod. And this seems to be the one it should have been before. It's a completely screen accurate version of the toy. It's done in the pink that he had in the movie, which is a color they very rarely put on a Hot Rod toy. Hasbro fears putting a boy's toy in pink. We remember this. But on top of that, they are throwing in extra accessories because he's getting his training sword and shield from when he's fighting the droid on the Autobot ship, just out of boredom more than anything. So yeah, and he's getting his fishing pole too. So like, it's a very loaded package. Like it's a lot, if they were going to release them as a Voyager, this is how much I would have expected them to put into it, because he really is deluxe size. He's just more complicated to transform. But that's not all. If we take it to vehicle mode, you can see that the vehicle mode is also really nicely clean and show accurate, movie accurate, more importantly. But do you notice something about it? Because there's something about it that's going off better than they did on the previous version. And here, I'll give you the previous one to show you. The patch of yellow's gone. That patch of yellow on the top that comes from another section of plastic on the mold. See, we all had an issue with that. It's a weird blemish on what is otherwise a really clean take on Hot Rod's vehicle mode, but we kind of gave it a pass because it came from a part of the sprue that can't be painted, the infamous palm plastic, the unpaintable plastic that some of his joints and his spoiler was made out of. Now, it is technically paintable, but not at the factory level. The processes to it are too involved to do on like a mass production scale. However, we kind of assumed that because it had to be part of that mold, that we just kind of assumed that we were stuck with that yellow. But we have this new one that doesn't have that issue, meaning it could have been right the first time. And if it could have been right the first time, that now leaves me to question, why was it done incorrectly before? Why was such a bad blemish to an otherwise near flawless figure left in when we now know it was completely possible to do without and to do it correctly the first time? So that's kind of what the video is about today. It is the first time should have been the best time. And why are we only getting like the things that should have been later on? Now, there's various reasons, and I'm going to be completely fair about all of it, okay? For instance, I'm not going to bring up all of the times they did opaque plastic replacing the translucent plastic. I acknowledge that's a personal pet peeve, my hatred of the clear plastic stuff. I think of all of those as something they should have done the first time around, but that's preferential. A lot of people prefer the translucent. Have fun with your time bombs. I acknowledge that it's a me thing, though, so we're not going to bring up that. But there's also situations that we should explain. So, Springer, for instance. And Springer produces a pretty nice Siege figure. You know, we liked this toy, right? Well, then Studio Series comes out and does the Springer we should have gotten the first time. He's more show accurate, his transformation is a little bit smoother, and he's got the details a little bit more correct. He's got the slanted shoulders, for instance. Now, this can be a little bit more, I can try to be a little bit more fair here. The first time they did it, it was at the Voyager price point. I mean, granted, in Siege, Voyager had a lot more room to work with. Keep in mind, we weren't that far off from Titan's Return, and this is the same toy line that gave us, like, the leftovers from Titan's Return, which would be Ape Face and Snapdragon. So triple changing was absolutely possible. Triple changing with gimmickry was possible at this time. So really, I don't buy it that just having a leader class price point allowed them to make those adjustments to make him more show accurate. I just think it made it easier. You absolutely could have done it right the first time. For some reason, they didn't. So, yeah, I'm going to be a little bit more critical of that, you know? And that's kind of where I mean. There is an excuse, but I don't completely believe the excuse, you know? And that's kind of where a lot of this falls. So, like, you take a look at, like, the Nemesis Prime situation from Velocitron. Scourge was supposed to be decorated like Scourge, but because the designer admitted that he got it, that he was, you know, not familiar with the character, you know, he just gave it the normal Nemesis colors instead of, like, looking it up and seeing if it was correct. Because he probably had to know he was working on a character that wasn't named Nemesis Prime. This one doesn't have an updated version yet, but we do know that Hasbro is aware of our dissatisfaction over the deco of this one, so it would not surprise me at all if they don't try it again at some point down the line when they can fit another leader into rotation somewhere. This is one I expect a V2 out of, but it still falls under the why didn't you get it right the first time? And the excuse here is incredibly flimsy because all you had to do was Google search and find out what it was supposed to look like. But then again, that's not foolproof. Here's what our first look at Cup was for Studio Series 86. And while, yeah, the robot mode's okay-ish, that vehicle mode is rough because of the color palette being mixed up. Now, according to the designer for this deco, they got the wrong source when they looked it up. You know, weird to me that Hasbro doesn't apparently have an internal database they could search just to make sure all this stuff was consistent, you know, like a series Bible or something. No, they Googled and came up with a fan-created color layout that completely set them on the wrong path when it came to how to arrange the colors on Cup. So, Buzzworthy Bumblebee had to give us a correct version of the toy. Got rid of the clear plastic, which was never a thing on the original toy or character design, never belonged on there in the first place. Obviously, improved the deco, especially in the vehicle mode. Again, why wasn't it done correctly the first time? Why did we have to buy that toy again and try and then pawn off one on eBay that was way less valuable because it shelf warmed forever and there's a better version of it out now? It's a great thing to do to your collectors. Oh, and Buzzworthy did that to more than one toy. We can talk about Cliff Jumper. And no, I'm going to hold to it what I said at the top. This ain't about the clear plastic. This is about cartoon accuracy, namely the arms. Cliff Jumper's arms aren't red. Now, there's a lot of these that you can argue toy accurate version, cartoon accurate version. For the most part, I can give you that, but really we acknowledge that cartoon accuracy is probably going to win out if you ask, because more kids and more adults would have seen the cartoon than had the toy, especially when you're talking about rarer or more expensive figures from back then. So I would argue cartoon accuracy should take priority. You know, if that is a more frequently seen version of the character. So yeah, again, is done weirdly. You can't even make the toy versus cartoon argument with the Cliff Jumper because Cliff Jumper would have had completely black arms if they had done toy accurate. So let's do one that you can argue that. Here's Trypticon. Now, this one is fine. I mean, it's dark gray. It's dark gray, but really, when you see it in black, that just looks correct. You know, because again, more recognizable in the cartoon. Kids in the 80s didn't exactly have enough money to throw around with their allowance to pick up a Trypticon, to grow up with this big gray dinosaur, instead of, to be more familiar with that rather than, the jet black one you saw in the cartoon smashing up cities and losing the Metroplex every time he showed up. This is the one that's been showing up at Ross for like $100, half off original cost. Guess whose Rosses don't have these? I would love to pay $100 to get a far prettier Trypticon that does not have the translucent plastic and does not have the weird hip issue. But of course, I'm in Florida, where distribution, even from a secondhand store, is pathetic. So I do not get to have that. Still, this is where like the cartoon accuracy thing comes in. Clearly, more people would have seen him in his black deco than the gray one, because most kids would not have been able to afford, or the parents of the kids would not have been able to afford the toy for them to be more familiar with. If you grew up with a Bumblebee toy and you were more familiar with how that looked, okay, perfectly fair. Perfectly fair. That's fine, because most kids could get their hands on a Bumblebee toy at any given point, almost regardless of what generation you're in. 90s kids, you struggle a little bit. Point is, I always see the cartoon as like the deco you should go for, because more people would be aware of it. It would look more correct to the character. Yeah, so that's where like that's where like the toy versions of things lose me. I know there's an audience for it, but not the main version of the toy. Not the main version. Like, you really, like, this is again a case of like, I think you did it better the second time. Why wasn't it done that way the first time? Market, like, if this was like a selects release, it's a limited market. Well, limit the toy one to a limited market instead. That seems to make more sense. They did it with Galvatron. There's also another sect of this, which is we had another idea and we're just releasing it later. So you get situations like Sandstorm, who's toy accurate here on his first release, but then later on you get the 2-pack release where they've given him the anime face and they've swapped up the colors a little bit to be more cartoon accurate. Again, why did you do that version second? I could also extend this weird head thing to the recent Studio Series Nemesis Prime. Let's be honest, I don't care. Argue the remolded forearms all you want. It's barely noticeable. This could have been a head swap. This could have been a head swap. This is like the market strategy of like Bandai with Dragon Ball figures. They could give you a Goku who just had a different head for every flavor of Super Saiyan that the ice cream shop is serving that day. But instead, they're going to dole it out one at a time. They're going to treat normal Goku, Super Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan Blue, Super Saiyan, or Ultra Instinct Sign. They're going to treat all of them as if they are completely individual characters, when all you could have done is just give me a bunch of heads to swap between. I'm way off track. I'm way off track. Let's continue. Just in case you think this is, a new thing for Hasbro, for instance, let's remind you. In 07, this is how your very first Camaro Bumblebee looked. This is iconic at this point. A lot of us had this one when it first came out. It's super exciting, too. The same year this one came out. So immediately, we acknowledge that in the movie, Bumblebee's robot parts that are sticking, that the Camaro is stuck to, is not jet black. it is not, like so dark you can't see the details black. It's gray. Bumblebee in the movies is yellow and gray, and the black is an accent color. It's the striping of his vehicle mode. It's a few little details here and there in the robot mode, but primarily, he's a gray skeleton wearing shrapnel of a yellow Camaro. And why was it done any differently than that? Why did it take 2 releases to just make him the colors that he's supposed to be in the movie? Even on a rushed production, like, they would have had art that showed him with gray parts instead of black. So they've been doing this to us for a long time. And it's part of a greater marketing strategy. It's part of a greater thing that they've been doing for a long time. Part of me wants to trace it all the way back to the Cybertron toy line, even though I acknowledge the way they handled things there was for the repaint to take advantage of G1 decos and that demand versus, getting the main characters from the cartoon out first. But it still felt like the more surefire sales were always reserved for whatever that homage repaint was going to be. And they still kind of follow through with that idea. So, here's Legacy Skyquake. Now, the problem here is, why Skyquake? He's a 1-episode character with barely any characterization. We see him as a zombie as much as we do an actual character. And they specifically do that because Dreadwing is a far more guaranteed sell, because he's a popular character from Transformers Prime. And the idea here is to get you to buy the mold on its first run, regardless of what they do to it, character deco-wise, because you're a collector. You're going to get the new mold, right? You want to see how the new mold works, right? You want a brand new toy, right? Well, you're going to suck it up and get whatever version we put out first. And then we're going to give you the version you really wanted later on, and we're not going to tell you that until it's too late. And that's the marketing strategy. Sell it on being a new toy first, sell it on being the toy you really want later. My most egregious example of this is always going to be Kingdom Galvatron. When you first look at him, you go, just like, why is there battle damage on him? Why is there scuff paint marks all over this toy? Why are they blue? If you have this toy in person, they're like blue. It's weird, and it doesn't look good, and it's like 2 years removed from when Siege made this like a line-wide thing, and Galvatron is supposed to be this like shiny, pristine robot that just got reformatted by a Unicron. Why would he have scuff marks on him already, like he's been through this war for thousands of years? Makes no sense. It just ruined the look of the toy. And Hasbro knew that it ruined the look of the toy, because when they reran the figure for Legacy, it was all gone. All of it had been taken off. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not the Legacy one, is it? No. This is the Legacy one. It's the same bright purple. It just doesn't have the scuffs on it anymore. No. This one is the 3rd one they made. This is the Studio Series 86 version. And now you actually get the deeper purple, more close to like a dark indigo, that you actually expect out of Galvatron. See, you see this, you see a bright purple, and you think Galvatron, you see the purple, but it's when you see it like this in movie-accurate colors, you go, oh, right, that's the color Galvatron's supposed to be. Oh, I had forgotten that. So, twice over, they got you to buy this toy because they had made an improvement on the original deco. So we got rid of the scuffs. You're going to buy it again, right? Oh, we're going to make him the right shade of purple to match the movie. You're going to buy him again, right? You got me to buy this toy 3 times already because I'm chasing the dragon of the ideal version of the toy. And they do that all the time. And what got me on this train before the release, the show off of the new version of Hot Rod, I saw a list that compiled all of the stuff that was coming out in 2026. I saw like this huge list of waves that were of toys we're getting. And there is a lot of refreshes and a lot of older figures coming back, and it feels like every single one of them is going to do the exact same thing. These minor redecos to make them a little bit more cartoon accurate, a little bit more comic accurate, a little bit more whatever, just for the sake of putting it out there again and getting one more run of money off of the toy. And it feels really nasty. There's something about it that feels extra scummy. And you know what? And it all just kind of boils down to what you expect. It's a money thing. In the case of toys like Galvatron, it shouldn't shock you that there's very few repaint options for him. You get a toy-based accurate one. They got really clever with the Straxus, but that's basically all you can really do with Galvi. So to actually get more versions of him sold, sure, let's put out an incorrect version first. Let's put out, a slightly better version, and then another slightly better version. And this thing shelf warmed because of how many times it was released. So it's not like the 86 one was to meet or sate a demand. No, it's just a way of making and milking the collectors for more money for the same thing. And it's getting frustrating. And we are gonna be doing it again. Don't get me wrong, I am kind of a sucker for this. I will be grabbing that version of Hot Rod because it is an ideal version of Hot Rod. It is one step closer to being exactly what I want. But why was it done this way? Why couldn't it have been done right the first time? And that's the question I leave. There's this genuine conspiracy theorist in my brain that wants to believe Hasbro is genuinely releasing inferior versions of these toys, specifically so they can sell superior ones down the line. Maybe that's just a conspiracy nut in my head waiting to crack, but it definitely feels like what's happening. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is this a thing? Is this just in my head? Are they genuinely just trying to put the toys out again for collectors who didn't get a shot at them the first time and tweaking them to improve them as they are able to? Or is this very deliberate way of getting more uses out of molds that don't really have a whole lot of repaint options? Hot Rod included, by the way. So that is up to you. Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.